Welcome to Life After 40 Conversations with Philip Blackett. This is a space for honest, thoughtful conversations about midlife without the hype, without diagnosis, and without the pressure. If you're somewhere between 35 and 55 years old and quietly navigating questions about your energy, your identity, your work, your faith, your relationships, or your health, you're not alone. Midlife can look stable on the outside and feel unsettled underneath. This show, Life After 40 Conversations, exists to do one thing well: to give adults in midlife the language, the clarity, and the calm perspective for a season that can feel oftentimes confusing, lonely, or silently overwhelming. This show exists to help you feel seen, steady, and less alone as you navigate the second half of life. Now, mind you, this is not a self help program. It's not a medical show. It's not even a motivational pep rally. What this is a meaning making space. Each episode is a grounded conversation with myself and with leaders, caregivers, entrepreneurs, pastors, parents, professionals, and thoughtful human beings who are living through midlife in real time, just like you and me. We talk about lived experience, not prescriptions, reflection, not instruction, reframes, not shoulds, because I believe in this deeply. Midlife is worth living and worth living well. And living it well doesn't start with pressure, it starts with perspective. My role here isn't to stand on a stage, it's to facilitate conversations that help capable, responsible adults think more clearly about who they're becoming in the second half of life. So if you ever thought to yourself, why does this season feel different? Or why am I rethinking things that used to feel settled? You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I'm grateful that you're here. So let's begin today's conversation. I'm actually really excited about today's conversation because our guest today is someone I've had the privilege of knowing for quite some time. Tabitha Baltimore and I attended Harvard Business School around the same time. So it's been really special watching her journey and the impact she's made across the business and technology world. Tabitha is a tech executive and business leader who has built an impressive career helping companies scale their growth, their products, and their partnerships. Over the years, she's worked with some of the biggest names in technology, including leadership roles at companies like Google and Meta, where she's helped drive product marketing, monetization strategy, and business growth at a global level. Her story is also one of resilience and determination. She's spoken openly about starting from very humble beginnings and working her way up step by step, from early jobs in college to Harvard Business School, and eventually leadership roles in the tech industry. Along the way, she's become someone who is deeply committed to mentorship and helping others succeed, especially entrepreneurs and professionals who are trying to navigate their own growth journey. What I appreciate most about Tabitha is her perspective on leadership, career growth, and the importance of learning from those just a few steps ahead of you. Something she often speaks about when discussing mentorship and professional development on LinkedIn and stages across the country. So today we're going to talk about leadership, career growth, mentorship, and what it really takes to build a meaningful career over time after 40. Tabitha, welcome to Life After 40 Conversations.
Thank you, Philip. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Likewise. So, really, just to kick things off, your introduction here, and just for people listening in to better understand who Tabitha is. Before the titles and the resume,
Mhm,
who is Tabitha in this season of life?
mhm. I am a wife, a mother, a business executive, and someone who feels really passionate that I have to reach back and help people climb the ladder as I climb. Um, and so what's interesting about this particular season is I think up until now, it's been really about me. It's been about my personal achievement and career, my personal satisfaction with like the places I visit, the things that I buy. This season encompasses a lot more people because I am a mother, so I have to care for someone. I am a wife, so I have to love someone. I am a business leader, so I have to coach other people. And so, because of the life experience and where I'm at, I really had to not be first anymore, but in a positive way, a less self-centered, less selfish way, because now it's an opportunity to care about others beyond just myself.
No, that makes perfect sense. And it's something I found often is like a key learning moment for a lot of us where you shift from, it's all about me to
Mhm.
it's all about we,
That's right.
whether it's family or people you work with or support. That takes a different way of approaching life and how you see things, while at the same time making sure you don't neglect yourself either in the process. So that's something you can do for the long term. And
And it's
so
all
when you think about, oh, I'm sorry.
And one thing I'll comment there and build on, Philip, is, I got married later on in life. Some people who maybe got married in their 20s or early 30s, they've probably have already gone through this season of figuring out how to care about others. But I was 35 when I got married, 36 when I had my daughter, somewhere around there, plus or minus a year. And so as I'm going to my 40s, I have a toddler at home. And so where we were talking about this before we started the show, it's like, I'm learning how to become a mom, and put someone else first in the season where some people might be well seasoned at doing this at this time. But I had always put my career and myself first. And now I'm in my 40s and I am having to think about others first, which is for me has been a revolutionary way to like have to rewire my brain.
Yep. No, and I think that's great to add on too, because, you know, to that point, everyone kind of goes about life different ways. But at some point, it's like if you're a parent, you're going to experience what parents typically go through. you know, if you live long enough, when you get to midlife, 40 and beyond, you're going to experience things that people after 40 typically go through. And
Mhm,
so that's why I think is really helpful here, just hearing your story today, just the common elements I'm sure our audience is going to be able to resonate with you on. And so, when we think about midlife in particular, you know, I tend to look at midlife as like between 35 to 55 years old. Doesn't have to start exactly at 40. But
mhm.
with that being said, when did you first realize something had shifted for you in midlife?
It was probably my 40th birthday. So it's funny because I went back and watched your YouTube video, and it seems like that milestone forces people to really revisit and reflect on their life, because it feels like if we're living to 86, we might live longer. You feel like you're at the midway point. And so you start to really take inventory on like, have you met respective goals you've thought that you would meet at this point? And for me, it was like in my 30s where I continuously doubted myself because I saw all my friends getting married and having kids. And I was like, is this going to happen for me? I had a lot of doubt. When I hit 40, in that reflection period, I said, okay, my teens was really about learning, and my adolescence was about learning. And then in my 20s, it was really about building foundations. You have those entry level jobs, you go to business school. And then my 30s was really about building. So it was like I build my brand, my reputation, my career. And my 40s, I was like, what do I want my 40s to be about? And for me, I was very clear it's about giving back. It needs to be now not all about me, like we were just talking about, but giving back. And so on my 40th birthday, party, I did this really fun thing where I invited 65 of my friends to a birthday party here in Dallas, Texas, and there were three voting stations. There was for three different nonprofits that helped me become the woman I am today. Those organizations were Inroads, that helped me get in my very first professional internship with Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. One was MLT, Management Leadership for Tomorrow, that helped coach me to get into my dream university for grad school, Harvard Business School. And the other one was called Hope for Haiti, which I come from Haitian heritage. And anyone who's picked up a newspaper or read the news in the last decade knows that it's a country that has struggled for a number of reasons. And so I allowed everyone to essentially vote for one of the nonprofits they thought resonated with them and that we wanted to acknowledge throughout the night, but didn't tell anyone what that acknowledgement actually entailed. And at dessert, I took the microphone, thanked everyone for coming, and then I brought out a big check and gave $10,000 to Hope for Haiti, who had won the the voting booth. So for me, it was really cool to be able to do something like that, you know, because again, before $10,000 was like what I would spend on a vacation or things for my house or consumption for me. But now I said, no, I'm choosing to give that $10,000 to an organization that I believe is doing good in the world because I've learned, I built the foundation, I've built, and now is a season of giving back. And this is evidence of me putting my money where my mouth is and starting to give back, whether it's with my time, with mentoring, coaching, or also with my financial gains with this donation.
That's awesome. And I like, in particular, just that reframe. It's just like, not just how you spend your time, but even how you steward your finances, as far as like
That's right.
whether it's more self focus, or self gratifying, or it's more so like, okay, we're going to get involved, not just me pick a nonprofit. I want you all as a community to be a
Mhm.
part of this. And then we're going to celebrate that together and see the benefit for another organization that clearly was helpful for you, that now has more of the means to help out more Tabithas in the future.
That's right. That's right.
And so, with that, after the 40th birthday party, did you notice anything either afterwards there or just in midlife in general for you, where was there something that used to work for you that suddenly didn't anymore?
Certainly. I think I have always been a very gritty person and the anything I want to achieve, I could put the worth ethic and hard work and energy and time behind it to make it happen, force it to happen, will it to happen. But there's only so much energy I have to give now, and there's only so much time I have to give now. So, working 80 hours a week, which is something I have done in my career on multiple occasions, I just cannot do that in this season. And so, I can't be the workhorse, and now I have to really think about how to work smarter, and working smarter for me looks like delegating to really smart people on my team. It means saying no to a lot of things and opportunities that are shiny objects, but are not aligned with the season or the mission that I have, whether at work and my personal life. It may mean really investing in learning how to use AI so I could be more operationally efficient in what I do, but I cannot use the 80-hour week principle that I used to do to be a high achieving performer at work. I had to pivot and find other means to continue to be a high achiever, but to do so more efficiently.
No, it makes sense. It's one of those things where it's just like, this comes from someone that, we were both in MLT, at one point, went to business school and worked in corporate and recognized like, hey, part of, getting started is proving yourself. And one of
Mhm,
the common things that business often does to help people prove themselves is how many hours can you commit on a weekly basis? Like,
mhm,
are you the first one to arrive? Are you the last one to leave? Like,
mhm.
I remember when I was working on Wall Street, that was just what was told to me. You had to do that if you had any chance of doing well, which is great when you're 22, 26 years old because
Mhm.
you have a lot of energy. And now, as you get older, you recognize your body changes. You might not have as much
No
energy to do
anymore.
all nighters, you
It's so
know? And
mhm,
so I think what's really telling about what you're saying is just you're moving more towards sustainability. It's
That's right.
more so you're going to have people that can do 80 hours a week. There's nothing wrong once you realize, hey, I need to make a pivot or a shift from that so I can do what's important to me and keep us moving forward. And it actually kind of escalates really your way of looking at it as a
Mm,
leader. I would think
mhm,
that's more inclusive of other people. Hey, I got to do this myself, as opposed to no, we're a team. This is the work we got to get done. I'm going to help divvy up who does what so we all get things done and we can keep doing that for the long term.
mhm. And you know what I think about is this old story about the plumber. There's one plumber who charges $2,500, but they take 10 hours to fix a particular problem. And the person goes to another person and they charge $2,500, but they can get it done in 1 hour. And the homeowner is frustrated because they're like, hey, you're only here for 1 hour and I'm paying $2,500. And the second plumber says, you're not paying me for my time, you're paying me for my expertise. And we are now in a season where we have accumulated a lot of expertise and can do things way more efficiently than probably the version of me at 22 years old. So I should be able to do the work, at a better, faster, et cetera, at this phase given my experience. So I don't want to make it seem like because we're working less hours, we're not doing as good of a job. We're that second plumber who has just built expertise where we could do it better and faster.
I think that makes perfect sense. It's almost like a sense like, you at 40 versus like at 20, there's a difference of 20 years.
That's
20
right.
years of experience, 20 years of education, 20 years of just seeing patterns that the 20-year-old that just started is just seeing for the first time. And so to your point, your ability to get things done smarter, more efficient, and quicker is a credit to what you've lived out already from
That's
that
right.
experience.
Mhm.
And so when you think about midlife, Tabitha, like there's a number of things that you're probably experiencing, for the first time nowadays, whether as a wife or as a mother, or as a business leader as well. Is there anything that surprised you the most about this season of midlife?
It was a lot of what we were just talking about, this idea that you can't work your way into success. Rather, you have to be more efficient and smarter than you had before. So what worked in the past isn't going to work today, especially in the age of AI. Like the reality is a lot of our parents were essentially going through the internet bubble, and a lot of them had to learn how to type. I don't know if you remember your parents, but I remember my mom like pushing one button at a time, trying to learn how to type. And here's like the teenager just like whipping through the keyboard. Where we're now those parents who like the kids are using AI like really quickly adopting it. They're native to this AI technology. And we in our 40s are the people who are like, okay, like, are we using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini? And how do we use? So, the thing is, like, we're now middle aged people, which is like a really awkward and sometimes weird thing to think about and accept. And the world is changing so fast that we have to evolve with it or we're going to get left behind, because there's some people who are like, this internet thing isn't gonna last, like it, and they took it for granted. And I think they have regret. And I think we don't wanna be the people who are in that boat who didn't take it seriously. Like, not every AI company is going to be successful. Are we in an AI bubble? Yes, I think so. But even in the internet bubble, there's still a number of companies that became formidable, like the FANG companies. And I think that's what we're gonna see, happen again in AI. And I think that, a lot of jobs, going a little bit tangent, but I think it's important part of the conversation. A lot of jobs are going to be eliminated because we're just not gonna need the same number of human talent to do the same jobs that AI agents can do. And so, how do you, in middle age, make sure that you remain competitive and relevant in where the world is going? And it's something I think a lot about is like, we're seeing a lot of rifts and layoffs, and I don't think those roles will be backfilled. And so, if there's a shrinking workforce, um, you have to get ahead of the curve. You have to think about, if there's less jobs, do I become a freelancer? Do I become a consultant? Do I start my own business? Do I buy a business? And that's something a lot of middle-aged people have to think about right now because of where the world's going.
There's so many gems in what you just shared, Tabitha. And I think one of which I'll highlight for everyone is there's a recurring theme as you realize, and I realize it too, because we're now on the opposite side of it. And that's the importance of upskilling,
That's right.
where how you used to do things growing up change 20 years later, sometimes now quicker. And we might have made fun of our parents for trying to figure out how to do the typewriter just right, or how to figure out what is this floppy disk for, or some people don't know what floppy disk is, and that's fine.
Right.
It is what it is. I'm talking to an audience that resonates here. That's fine. But people just thinking in terms of you know, like, Mom, this is a CD-ROM, and that's sort of, it's like, how do you not get this? And then now it's the point where, to your point, people are trying to figure out what this whole AI thing is. They thought that a lot of people were hoping like this was just a fad. They just nothing's happening here. It's going to pass over, and I'm going to say I told you so afterwards. And now people on the other side are saying I told you so. On the back end of, like you said, we're seeing a lot of restructuring, a lot of layoffs, a lot of reorganizations, and people are caught by surprise. And there's some people that say, "Hey, I kind of saw this coming. Let me learn what I need to learn so that I can be more valuable for the company, so that when we make this shift, I can go with them. I'm not holding them back. I'm not having them make a tough decision on my future."
Mhm,
So I think that that's one that very much is relevant to our conversation, because that's a part of midlife too. You recognize that the technology you're used to is different, and now you have a choice to make. Do you go with the technology and see where that grows into? Or do you resist it and take a chance of being left behind?
mhm, that's exactly right.
And so I think this kind of leads into the next question here. You know, what did midlife force you to stop ignoring? And what changed once you paid more attention to it?
Mhm. So, because I worked excessively, I was one of those people who sacrificed a lot of things in my life to make sure work was always number 1 and that I was always excelling at work. That meant fitness, that meant friendships, that meant staying on top of my finance. It meant, neglecting anything but work. And so once you hit 40, you realize that if you are not investing in your fitness right now, your future self is what's going to suffer. And I'm not okay with that anymore. And so now, I'm doing Pilates 3 days a week. I'm going on a 4 mile walk 3 days a week, and then I have a rest day. And that's helpful with my energy and my mood and being able to just see the progress and like my physique that I long for. So I'm just not willing to sacrifice everything else in my life at all costs of work. Again, because of what we were talking about earlier in the plumber 1, plumber 2 example, if I'm plumber 2, I'm more efficient with my time, and so I don't have to work 80 hours to be a top performer. I can still work 40 hours and still be a top performer, and investing in my health makes me a better performer because I have more mental clarity and more energy and things of that sort. So I do that. Also, I make time for my friends in a way I did not do before. I felt like after kids, it was like work, kids. That's it. And I don't think that's good for your mental health. I think you gotta
Mhm.
have community, people where you can have an outlet to share and do life with. And
Yeah.
so I have 3 different groups of friends that I meet with on a regular cadence. One is a professional group of business executives here in Dallas, and we meet for 4 hours once a month and we talk through business problems. So it's not me in a silo trying to figure it out. I have another group of girlfriends who are all leaders in their respective fields. There's a doctor, there's a lawyer, there are 3 businesswomen, um, and we're all mothers with young kids. So we could talk about juggling work
Mhm.
and parenthood and also trying to be loving, caring wives. And then I have another group of friends that's just play dates. The thing we have in common is our kids are all the same age. And it's great because we can have adult conversation that is, appropriate to be around 3-year-olds, but our kids can play, and so there's still that adult outlet instead of always just being with my daughter who I love, but I don't think it's healthy to only be around your family. And so I'm not neglecting my fitness. I'm not neglecting having fun and having friends, and I'm not neglecting my finances. My husband and I, every single week we dedicate between 30 minutes an hour to take a look at the progress we're making against our financial goals. And so instead of it just happening to us, we have now taken control and we know every dollar coming in, every dollar going out, and we're a lot more intentional. And it gives me more peace of mind to know what's going on, especially when you see the layoffs and the restructuring taking place across the organization. Do you have that 6 to 12 months emergency fund? Because what we're finding is it's not 6 months to find a job these days, it's closer to a year. Do you have
Mm.
that year emergency fund? Do you have the investments in the, safer stock portfolio with the war breaking out of Iran? Stocks are unpredictable. Do you have the liquidity? And if you are thinking about these things right now, when it happens, you're gonna feel like, "Oh, crap, this happened to me," instead of
Mhm.
being proactive and having time where you can be intentional and reflect that and plan for it. Because, the market is cyclical, and it's been going on a run up for a long time, so it's only a matter of time before we see a correction to the market, and are you prepared? Whether it's from a career perspective or stock market, whatever the case might be. And so a lot of things that I neglected just for work, and then I would get punched in the face, because I wasn't taking care of it. I'm just not doing that anymore. There's a lot more harmony and balance in my life than there once was, and I think I just feel a lot more peace because of that.
That's awesome. I think one of the things that was great from what you shared too was like your life is more than one dimension.
That's right. That's
It's
exactly right, Philip.
it's more than just work. It's more than just motherhood. It's encompassing all of it. It's multifaceted. And so the thought that goes there is just the thought of, how do you pay attention to each one of these parts because it's a part of your life. It's important to you. To have friends that can relate to having young children to do play dates and friends that we talk about business problems because that's kind of helping with the mental, side of things as far as wanting to grow. Um, I love that you're making changes where it's like making sure your fitness is there because you want to be around for a long time as your family continues to grow. Because I can also think to myself too, if you didn't make those changes, if you didn't pay attention to what you were feeling and you decided, hey, I just got to buckle down, do what I've been doing before, the same strategy 20 years ago, what do you think that would have cost you if you kept going the same way
Mhm,
versus making some of these changes?
mhm. I think my mental health would have been sacrificed because I did realize at one point when I was working 80 hours a week and I was a mother and a wife, I never saw my husband, I never saw my kid, and I was miserable, and I saw me going down a really dark path. I remember calling my mom and saying, "Mom, I don't understand why people live just to do this," and she got a little worried about me, and she was like, "If you're starting to talk like that, you should maybe reflect and change something." And it was really unfortunate because for me, it was a dream job that I was in. It was the first time I broke into the executive ranks and owned a P&L that was worth billions of dollars and had a massive team, and I was speaking all these stages, but I was miserable because I didn't have the other buckets of my life full. They were all dry, empty, and I was pulling everything I had in this one bucket. And I intentionally said, I'm gonna leave this and find a job where I can have a bit more harmony is what I call it. And it was like 2 steps back in my career, like the scope, the impact, the brand name, etcetera. But I was like, I'm just in a season where I'm not trying to impress anyone else. I'm trying to make sure that I am whole physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, and something has to change. And so I switched jobs to a job that was a bit more sustainable where I could work the 40 hours and make those massive changes. But I think my mental health was really at risk if I hadn't made that pretty significant change in my job and career choice in that season.
That's powerful. And so, n- after making those changes, what do you feel like now are, and you might have shared some before, but what are some of the beliefs, some of the habits, some of the rhythms that now have become non-negotiable for you?
Mhm. At our house, we call it the 5 Fs. You probably heard of them. So our faith, our finances, our fitness, our family and friends. And so, with our faith, we do church, but now my husband and I have also joined small groups because we don't wanna do life alone. So we wanna be around people who have shared values as us, where we're talking to them about what's going on, and they can help encourage us from a spiritual lens. We talked about the finance piece. We just are really on top of it. There's a lot of uncertainty coming down the pipeline in the next 3 to 5 years, and everyone needs to prepare right now for what's coming. Again, because I work in tech and I've been following AI for over 10 years, I
Mm,
knew this day would come. And I think that a lot of people are just not aware of how drastically our society is going to look in 3 to 5 years. And they have to prepare now. And then there's the family piece where my mother and father, they live in Florida. And so I don't get to see them as often as I would like to. So when something isn't working, we put systems around it and we calendar it. And so for our family, every Wednesday night from 5:30 to 6:30, everyone in the family hops on FaceTime and we catch up. And everyone shares their highs and lows from the week. And we share funny stories about what's happened with my toddler, Amara. And then we pray for one another. We pray for whatever each other are struggling for. And that allows us to feel very connected and have that family bond, even though my sister's in DC, we live in 3 different cities.
mhm,
And then there is a piece around, our friends. We talked about that, like how I have intentional circles who I can fill their cup and they can fill my cup, and I make time for that. So these are the 5 Fs. That is faith, family, fitness, finance, and friends. And these are non-negotiables for me. I will not allow any of these buckets run low or run dry because I think they're critical to our overall life satisfaction and happiness. And because of the busyness of life, it's
mhm.
easy to kick some of these buckets down the road and say, oh, I'll make time for a guy's night or a girl's night later. And then later never comes. So
Yeah,
we have to set things up where they're intentional and have a rhythm to it. So we know every month we have girls' night where we can catch up with all these moms that are, in the same season, or these corporate ladies or these play dates. They are non-negotiables to make sure that these buckets or wells never run dry.
that's great. And especially like seeing how committed you are to it and something you do consistently day by day, week by week, like that's where things really turn for the better, not just for yourself, but obviously for the people around you, you know.
Mhm.
And
And the
so
calendar is really, I can't understate the calendaring because everyone has good intentions. Everyone has, "Oh, I will sit down with my husband at some point to have this conversation, or my wife at some point." But it's having that dedicated block of time to have that conversation that is sacred and you don't miss it. It's like a work meeting. Would you just show up to that work meeting late? Would you show up to that work meeting unprepared? Would you
mhm,
just not show up altogether? No, like this is, and you're, if you want, you could treat your marriage like a loving business where we need to be on top of our KPIs, our OKRs, and our metrics. And the financial health of that marriage really is something you should be take as something sacred that you don't miss. And I think you should think about all the buckets in the same way.
and that's a great way to look at it too, because otherwise, you lend yourself to when life happens. You don't
Hmm.
have it scheduled. It's like, oh, well, so and so had this thing that just came up. I had to do this, or my daughter, she had an accident. I got to take care of that. I completely forgot this sort of thing, as opposed to really segmenting your calendar and your life to say, these are things that are important to me. These
Hmm.
are my big rocks, right? These are the things I'm not willing to sacrifice or compromise on because of how important they are. And that intentionality, that's what really does it for a lot of people in midlife to say, hey, I'm not just speaking this, it's like I'm living this and I'm
Yeah.
showing it by that follow through afterwards.
Mhm. Exactly.
So when you think about where things are now for you, Tabitha, what does thriving look like for you now?
Mhm. Thriving. Well, because life is not about me per se anymore, it's about others. It is my daughter doing well? Is she happy? Is she healthy? Is she learning? Is she hitting her milestones? Does she feel connected to my husband and I? Does she feel secure and safe? Does she feel loved? If those things are yes, I feel like I'm thriving as a mother. For my husband, does he feel supported? Does he feel seen? Does he feel appreciated? If so, then I feel like I'm thriving as a wife. And then at work is there are metrics that we've agreed upon. Am I hitting those numbers? And if so, I feel like I'm thriving. And so instead of it feeling gray and ambiguous, I think there's a couple of like, I hate to oversimplify it as check
Mhm.
boxes, but for the sake of this conversation, I have like mental check boxes. Like, are these things true? And if so, I feel like I'm thriving in that particular category. And I'm not always like thriving in all three. I remember a long time ago, I had a mentor. She was a partner at McKinsey and she left to be a stay-at-home mom. And I was a 20-something-year-old early career woman, and I just could not wrap my brain around someone making that life choice. And I remember asking her very blatantly, like, "Why? Like, why would you do that? Like, you've reached a pinnacle of, like, success in a lot of folks' eyes." And she said, "What dawned on me, Tabitha, is that you only get to pick 2 out of 3. So when you get older, you'll realize that there's work, there's your marriage, and then there's motherhood.
Mm,
And you can choose to do all three. If you do all three, they're going to all be done very mediocrely, if that's a word. You could do two and do them good, or you could do one and do it incredibly well. She's like, but there's very rarely a time that you can see people doing all three exceptionally well. It just rarely, if ever, happens. Um, Emma, who is a CEO of American jeans brand, the Kardashian brand, she said, "Someone who says they can do all three, I'll show you a liar." And so I love that quote because it's true. And so for me, I'm not always trying to be like top. I want to be realistic. It's really hard to do all three incredibly well. But if the things that I said were really important are checked, I
mhm.
consider that me thriving.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I love that whole you can't balance everything, but with that, you focus on what you wanna really be good at, what you wanna be
That's right.
great at. You kinda recognize too, like, it shifts over time.
Hmm.
And even with that example with the partner, it's just like, it sounded like there was a shift where it's like you reached that achievement, you reached that pinnacle, and that might have been a moment where she thought, "Where do we go from here?
Hmm.
What's most important to me at this stage of life?" And just like that reflection you've done, it's the thought of, "Okay, where do I wanna spend more of my time, more of my focus on?"
Hmm.
And I applaud her making that tough decision to say, "Hey, listen, I want to focus on what's thriving for me."
Hmm. And what's interesting is what we call in our house is glass balls and rubber balls. And so when you have a list of things that you can do in these three important buckets, then you say, I cannot drop the glass ball. Because if I drop that glass ball, it's going to shatter and going to be nearly impossible to put it together. But sometimes when I'm juggling, I might have to drop a rubber ball and it's okay. I can pick it up some other time, you know? And so that's how we think about a lot of these things. So, like, even if we're talking about the friendship bucket, if I miss a dinner with the girlfriends once a month, like that 1 month out of the year, that's a rubber ball. It's fine. But if my kid is sick, I need to take her to a doctor. That's a glass ball. And so we have to determine in our life what is considered glass balls versus rubber balls and just make sure we never drop the glass ball.
I love that analogy. I really think that that's a great way to look at it. And I'm sure our audience is really taking note of that, along with a number of things you shared thus far, Tabitha. So I really appreciate that. So if there is someone listening right now to our conversation and feels like she or he is quietly drifting or even burning out in midlife, what do you want them to hear from you right now?
Mhm. You are not alone. A lot of people have had this burnout phase. Some have had it earlier, some will come later. This is just the season that you're in. It's really important that you surround yourself with people who love you, believe in you, and can encourage you. It's important to do some reflection and understand what are your glass balls versus your rubber balls. It's really important to understand what are your buckets in your life and what's empty, because that might be contributing to why you feel a little bit low right now. And fill those buckets that are important to you, whether it's the faith bucket and finding a community of people that have your shared faith that you could be around, whether it's fitness, finding a group fitness class where you can attend on a weekly basis, whether it's finances and you feel like you have no idea where to start. Ramit Sethi is one of my favorite um, thought leaders on this. Pick up the book, I Would Teach You How to Be Rich. It's really easy, applicable steps that you could take. If it's friendships, schedule that girl's night out, schedule that guy's night out. This year for family, just find a way to hop on a call with people that are in your family and put it on the calendar. But the likelihood of you feeling a little lost is maybe you needing to take a moment to step back and reflect and understand why you're feeling off, what buckets are low, if not empty, and filling them, and surrounding yourself with the people who can help you achieve your goals.
That's great. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that's really helpful. Thank you for sharing that. And so, for people that resonate with this conversation, particularly with what you're saying, Tabitha, and they want to follow you, your work, and your philosophy on where you see things in midlife, um, where's the best place for them to connect with you after this?
It's Tabitha Baltimore. You can find me on LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. I'm posting on a regular basis to share with folks what I've learned across the 40 years of life I've been on this planet. On LinkedIn, it'll likely be mostly professional, but if you want to hear more about life beyond just the professional realm, you can find me on YouTube and TikTok.
Excellent. And we'll make sure to have all that included in the show notes here. And so Tabitha, I think this has been a great conversation. I think there's a lot to be learned from this, a lot of gems you shared with us here. Really appreciate your steadiness and honesty you brought to this conversation. Just helping people, like you said, like feel less alone in this season. That often goes unspoken because we're constantly on the day to day hustle grind and not really having time to breathe or even feel comfortable asking for help. And so, for everyone listening to this conversation, let this be a reminder midlife is not a problem to fix, it's a season to better understand, to come to grips with reflecting on what's really important to you now and what's the right priorities, the right buckets, the right glass balls or rubber balls. Some that were rubber balls before, maybe they become glass balls and vice versa. But just taking that, everything that Tabitha shared thus far, if there's something that she said that really resonates with you, reflect on that after this episode. You don't have to rush into action. Just sit with it, see what it brings up as far as thoughts, and think about potential plans from there. Because that's where real change begins, not with urgency to act right now. It's often just taking time to reflect and have that self awareness. So, we really appreciate you, Tabitha, being a part of this conversation. For everyone here, to learn more about Life After 40, head on over to our website at lifeafter40.com. You're also welcome to connect with me at philipblackett.com. And just as a friendly reminder as we close, midlife is worth living and worth living well. Thank you so much for everyone spending time with us here. listening in or watching our conversation. Thank you, Tabitha, for being a part of this as well. Absolutely appreciate your presence here and all that you shared with us. This has been Life After 40 Conversations with Philip Blackett. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next conversation. Take care.